Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Mr. Robot Season 4 Episode 9 Conflict. This video is part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Mr. Robot. So I have to start with a spoiler warning for Mr. Robot Season 4 Episode 9 up to this point. If you have not seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, I just watched the episode, so it's too early to say for certain, but this is maybe my favorite episode of the entire show. Considered me blown away. Feel so energetic, so excited. That was some of the best television I've ever experienced in a very long time. It was absolutely amazing. Now, when I was first, of course, maybe some of the things in this episode kind of dependent on what happens next. So maybe what happens next might make me think less of this episode, or maybe more of this episode, if that's even possible. But damn, was this a damn good episode. Now, it starts, I don't know if we're going to get into all this, but yeah, there's some things that they're sort of teasing. Like, at first, I thought maybe we're going to get some big revelation, particularly the previous song, because they're referencing Angela saying, oh, we're going to just rewind the tape. How she kept rewinding the tape and undoing things. I was like, are we going to get the answer to White Rose Project? And no. And then they also tease with the little kid, the young Elliot, we saw earlier in the season talking about the third one. And I was like, ooh, we're going to get an answer to the third one. Kind of, sort of. So let me start with that one. Because there was a theory going around that the third one referred to the real Elliot. That because there was a line from, I think, Season 1, Episode 4, when Elliot was having the fever dream, when he was withdrawing, and there's all these weird imagery and weird shit. But one line in particular a lot of people have been talking about recently is Angela tells Elliot, and I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how long she said. I think it was 30 days, but she said you were just born 30 days ago, or a week ago, or a month ago, or however, whatever the hell she said, I can't remember. But the point is, he was just born a very short time ago. And of course, when this episode first aired, you kind of dismissed that as a bunch of weird imagery. Because this is the same sequence where his fish started talking to him and be like, move me to the damn window! So you kind of dismiss all this weird imagery and shit. But you find that some of it actually does have some meaning. And people talked last week's episode about the key, because that was another thing that was mentioned and that was shown in that little sequence. But what's important here is Angela saying you were just born however, short while ago. So in the opening sequence, we go back to the boardroom, which we saw, which is basically, inside Elliot's head, where young Elliot and Elliot's mother, of course, is just the version of them in his head, are waiting for Mr. Robot, Elliot, and the third one to show up. Now, it kind of makes you think, because it's kind of weird if they say Elliot and the third one, so maybe the third one actually refers to the character we have known as Elliot. And Elliot, when they say Elliot, actually refers to the real Elliot. So, jumping ahead of myself, this hasn't been 100% confirmed, or until maybe someone's going to read an interview with Sam Esmail who says it is 100% confirmed. But as far as I'm concerned, it's still a bit open-ended. But there really seems to be heading in that direction. It's almost as good as confirmed, I say. Because they talk about, young Elliot and Elliot's mother talk about how they hadn't heard from him in a long time. And then Mr. Robot mentions, well, he actually found out that he came out and talked to Darlene. So Darlene is the key to bringing him back out. For me, that confirms basically that Elliot has been repressed for the entire length of the show, and that the person we've come to think of Elliot is a new personality that started taking over. Which, if you look at it in the context of the show, and Sam Esmail did say once everything is revealed, you can go back and it will make total sense that it was all perfectly planned for. So if you go back and look at the first season 1, Elliot doesn't know who Darlene is. He tries to kiss her because he doesn't realize she's his sister. He doesn't know who his father is, because he sees Mr. Robot and he finally sees the photographs and sees that Mr. Robot is his father, and he doesn't even know that his father's dead, and when he finds out, that's of course a huge revelation. So he doesn't know anything about his life, yet he narrates Shayla, he narrates doing drugs, he narrates eating Krista, so all present, and he narrates Angela like he's familiar with her. He realizes that he has a backstory with her, so he remembers that part of it. But a lot of his life he doesn't remember. So it seems like he's only remembering because Angela's currently in his life. So he's only remembering present tense stuff. Not even all of it, because he doesn't remember Darlene. So to me, this makes perfect sense that the show began when he says, "Hello, friend." Maybe that was actually the birth of this new personality, and we're wondering who the third one is. Maybe that's him. Now, it is confusing because Mr. Robot throughout the show does refer to him as Elliot, and of course, Darlene calls him Elliot. So if he's not Elliot, then what do we call him? Or if the other Elliot, the real Elliot's actually, would we call him something else? Now there's two Elliot's again. I don't know. Hopefully they'll find a way to unscrew this if this turns out to be the case. But I'm pretty confident. I don't know. I've just watched the episode, so I haven't seen anyone else's interpretation. I don't know if people are saying maybe interpreting that scene in different ways, which is possible. I don't know. But to me, it was pretty damn clear when they were saying, "Oh, we haven't seen him in such a long time." And it was like, "Oh, but he actually returned. He came back to talk to Darlene." And he's referring to that one conversation that either Elliot nor Mr. Robot had any memory of. Which had to do with Vera, by the way. So, yeah. So I think that very much what will be the case. Now, Mr. Robot also talks about in that same meaning that they have to show Elliot what he's done. Because, the mother and the young version of Elliot is we got to bring him here now, we got to bring him here, we got to, I don't know, it does seem like they are referring to the character we know as Elliot and the person who's being repressed. I don't know. So maybe that puts a little thing in that theory, but I don't know. I'm sticking with that. To me, that makes more sense that someone has been repressed. But anyway, Mr. Robot said that they're going to show Elliot what he's done. So, of course, this is very cryptic, and so they're introducing a mystery to be resolved later on. What did he do? I don't know. No clue. I'm not even going to speculate, but I definitely know it's going to have some importance to who he is and what the deal with this three personality thingy is. So I'm very excited. I'm not disappointed at all this wasn't resolved in this episode, because I think there's still 4 episodes left. God damn it, they gotta leave some things for 4 episodes. At this point, at the end of the episode, I'm like, what are they gonna do for the next 4 episodes? But I'm sure they'll find some. And in fact, this is what I wanted. I actually kind of sort of maybe predicted that in my last video that things were going to come to a head with White Rose, and then it was going to seem like an ending, and the last 4 episodes going to go in completely new, different direction that we weren't expecting. It seems like that kind of will be the case, although that's not what I said. I said they would reveal who the third one is, or reveal White Rose's project, which they did not do, but they did sort of put in the whole thing with the Deus group and White Rose. Kind of fucked them over. So that is definitely a conclusion. But I don't know. They could find ways to undo that. Anyway, so Getting to the rest of this, I want to talk first about when Darlene meets up with Mr. Robot. And of course, she does come to realize it is Mr. Robot. It makes total sense to me, by the way, that Elliot is completely suppressing himself and Mr. Robot has to take over because Elliot's in a state of shock, as he talked about in the previous episode. He doesn't think he can do this, so Mr. Robot has to take over because Elliot just can't deal with it. He just can't deal. And I love how, like, Darlene can tell that something's wrong, and she keeps pressing Mr. Robot to the point where she's like, if you don't tell me what's happened, what's wrong, I'm leaving. And he's like, look, I shouldn't be the one to tell you. He should tell you himself when he's ready. And it seems like that satisfied Darlene. That was just such a good scene. And it was also interesting that Darlene was like, oh, where the hell have you been? I've been kidnapped and whatever and all this and threatened to be killed, and not realizing the same thing happened to Elliot. This is one of the cases I wish he would just say, well, I was held captive by Vera. I was kind of like wanting him, just say you were held captive by Vera. But I guess it does make sense that he kind of doesn't want to dwell on that and he deal with that shit later because there's more urgent things to deal with at the moment that they got to get their shit together to basically pull off the greatest hack in history. I mean, that's basically what they did in this episode. So, and Elliot's life was literally dependent on it because he knows that White Rose wanted to kill him. And, that's what they kept talking about. So, Price comes in and gives Elliot White Rose's the chip with all the information of White Rose's project. Now, I have a feeling that is going to be very important going forward. Elliot promised Price to destroy her project, but he didn't do that in this episode. So will he do that? Will he look and see what this project is and maybe be a little convinced by what it is? Don't know. But anyway, so, goddamn, this episode was... I'm sorry, I'm gushing. This episode was amazing. So, then we get Price going inside, the meeting. Of course, White Rose thought she'd be all clever and move the meeting to a different place and just meet Price himself because he knows that Elliot and Price are up to something. Which, he's 100% correct, but... Price comes off as, oh, you moved the meeting and inconvenienced people for some conspiracy theory. And I love fucking Price's attitude throughout this whole meeting. I mean, it was absolutely perfect because it really ties up the interactions these two have had throughout the seasons. And it's particularly season 2, I think the most they played up their sort of adversarial relationship, and season 3 also touched on that as well. We didn't get much of that this season yet until this episode, and I'm very thankful for that because it was great that they sort of held that back until they could really jump into it. I mean, we got a little bit of it, don't get me wrong. We got a couple scenes with them, of course. But here they really went full on at it, which really reminded me of the kind of, they always had this relationship where they're always trying to one-up the other. It was always about power plays. And sometimes and usually it came, even when Price thought he had the power, he didn't. So it all came down to White Rose always winning over Price. And of course the biggest thing of that is when they blew up all those E-Corp buildings, killing all those people. And basically White Rose admitted she did that just to piss off Price, which is pretty damn fucked up. So they always had this vying for power, and White Rose is always winning. In fact, there was this line, I think it was back in season 2, where Price was talking to I don't even remember his name. He's irrelevant now, but the dude who, I don't know. The dude who was in season 1. But anyway, he used to be CTO and then he got fired. But anyway, he was talking to him, and he said that whatever room, Price was saying, whatever room he's in, he's always the most powerful person in the room. But there was, I think he said 3 people. I can't remember how many, maybe it was just 1, but 3 people that isn't true with, and it's his goal in life. to make that the case. And it's obvious he was talking about White Rose. And honestly, I think he did that. He actually succeeded in this episode in becoming more powerful than White Rose. And it cost him his life. Because as far as I know, like, he lost all his money as well, just as White Rose, but still, you could say he was more powerful than her because he did that. He helped do that to her. He helped take her down. So, I think it's pretty clear that he was the more powerful one in that room. And, of course, White Rose shot him for it and killed him, which was, really intense. But anyway, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. But, so good. But anyway, yeah, so we get, I love, like, the whole dialogue interaction between Price and Wright. Like, as I said, this is like the crowning achievement. This is the build-off. This is the payoff to all their scenes we've gotten throughout the season. It was so perfect. And just the attitude Price had, especially when White Rose started spiraling down, when Elliot started taking him down, the gloating that Price would do would be like, oh, I guess, like, it was just so damn good. You know, and I would make the argument that Price knew he was going to die. Although when White Rose shot him, he did look genuinely surprised. And that did shock me as well, that she would just do that in public like that. That obviously that they were wanting him to get in the car so they could take him someplace private and then kill him. But he was just like, yeah, he played his power play and totally, like, she just lost her shit. And I think it did surprise him. But I would argue that even though he was surprised that she shot him right then and there, I think he knew he was gonna die. I think he had that attitude throughout this entire episode that, fuck it, my life is over, I'm fucked, but at least I'm gonna take White Rose down with me. And that's basically what he ended up saying later. He ended up saying, like, I knew I couldn't win, but at least I'm going to make sure that you lose with me. And that was just so good. Anyway, so during this, we also get the scenes with Elliot and Darlene and how they split up. And of course, at first, it's still Mr. Robot taking over. And he tells Elliot, and he's being, like, more sort of kind to her and trying to work with her rather than being his, pushy self, whatever. It's like, look, we do have to split up because we have to pull this off. Now, that phone call between Elliot and White Rose, and again, it starts off as Mr. Robot. And I love how they do the switch because White Rose tells Elliot that Angela's alive and that he can see her again. And this sort of feeds into White Rose saying earlier in previous episodes that she wanted to show Elliot that they're on the same side. So this is when this whole project time travel thing gets a bit tricky. What does he mean when he says she's still alive? Is he saying that he literally faked her death? Or is he saying that he used this time travel thingy or whatever to bring her back to life? Or maybe this is the potential to bring her back to life. Because we've seen this as the way she's talked to other people. She's talked to people like Grant right before she killed him, saying we will see each other again. So she obviously believes, whether or not this project actually can cause time travel or change the timeline or whatever, I think it's very clear that she believes that it can and that it does. So yeah, it brings up more interesting questions. We didn't get resolutions to that in this episode, but I still, it's obvious that what White Rose said to Elliot, even though he obviously doesn't end up believing her or going along with her, it's gotten to him because we get the switch from Mr. Robot to Elliot when they're on the phone. And so it's obvious that it's Elliot, that talk of Angela being alive has brought him out. But it wasn't enough to completely turn him, though. But it was enough to grab his interest. too, because at 4 he's just like, I can't deal with this. So I get the impression he's kind of hiding in his mind and letting Mr. Robot take over. But that moment, as soon as Angela's name's mentioned, he comes to the forefront. But he's still... It does definitely give him pause. You can tell that he's mulling this over. He's thinking about it. But when Darlene sends out that video of the F Society video, then he kind of gets back on track. And it's like, actually, you're the one that needs help. It's so amazing. So anyway, it was just so intense because you had that intense scene, that dialogue, battle of wits with Price and White Rose in the building, but outside the building you have Elliot and Darlene desperate to take them down. And it's interesting because, Darlene goes to the real meeting place and she finds this. There's no way she can get a line of sight because that place is guarded like fuck. And so she gets the idea to do the whole F Society thing. And it's so funny because White Rose thinks that was their final play, and she even mocks Price. Oh, is this what your final play is? We'll recover from that. But that's true. And because that wasn't their final play, it was just a distraction to bring the Deus group out in the open where Darlene could have the line of sight. And it was, oh my God, I can't understate how suspenseful, how much on the edge of my seat I was. Like, this may be, I said this about last week's episode, but of course this week's episode tops that for sure. One of the most suspenseful state of mind I've ever been in when watching a show or movie was with this episode. Is that when they're down to the wire, they're trying to get, make this hack work to take away all of their money, which takes away all of their power, but they just need all these things to go right, and the people are leaving, and the Darlene puts a little roadblock up to try to slow them down, but they eventually get around it, so they're going to be fucked. Elliot's trying to hack the cell phone tower to get White Rose's phone because it doesn't work unless they do it all at the same time. And they finally get, and even I love how Mr. Robot even says, why do we have to leave this down to the wire? Why do we have to? And they do it, and it was amazing. It was absolutely, it was some of the greatest payoff in television. I'm just over the moon about just how intense, how amazing this was. Now, here are some questions. Obviously, because they're acting like, oh, we won, we defeated White Rose, and blah, blah, blah. But we still got 4 episodes left. Now, so this begs some questions, because White Rose just shot Price in public, in the view of everyone. And so at the end of the episode, we hear the police, trying to break down her door. But we hear, she's just sitting there putting on her makeup, whatever, and chillaxing. But we hear the police break down the door and a gunfight ensues. So you assume it's all of, her goons, the Black Army goons, are shooting at the police and the police are shooting back. So we don't know exactly the fate of White Rose yet. We do know that she has no money. And as far as Price is concerned, that her project was gone. Now, that makes me a bit... At first I was a bit disappointed because, does that mean we're not going to find out what this project is? But then I saw they showed this commercial in between, and, spoilers if you don't want to see commercials, but that's ridiculous. But anyway, it's on the TV. They show it on USA. If you watch that, but anyway. It's part of the episode, technically, so I'm not spoiling future things, but whatever. If you're that sensitive, turn off the video now. I don't want to hear you whine. But anyway, they show this commercial where I think it was the actress who plays Darlene. Someone says all of you, everything's going to be answered, and then they show a picture. While she says that, they show a picture of that little, the project, the machine, whatever, that they showed at the opening premiere of season 3. So it seems to directly imply that they are going to answer what this project is. And again, spoilers for the preview for next week's episode, which again, they aired during this actual episode, so I count it as part of this episode, but whatever. If you're that sensitive, you still shouldn't be watching. But anyway, in next week's the promo for next week's episode, they show Elliot saying that he has to get to Washington Township. So, and it's interesting to think that he still has that clip that has all the information according to Price. This is all the information on White Rose's project. And I think he's going to look at it. I don't think he's just going to blindly destroy it like Price asked. I think he's going to look at it and it's going to pique his curiosity, and that's why he wants to get to Washington Township, because that's currently where this project is. So I think he's going to want to inspect it himself, and I don't think that's going to happen next week, maybe the week after, because they might have to push these things back. But I think we're going to, one way or another, we're going to get an answer. Now, also in the promo, again, if this bothers you, why are you still watching? But also in the promo for next week's episode, they still talk about Dark Army has been a danger to Elliot and Darlene, and it's something they still have to deal with, which does make me wonder. I mean, obviously, Dark Army will still be around, but their core power is gone. The core power was the Deus group. The core power is White Rose and her money. Her money gives her power. So it seems like, but they still exist though. They don't just vanish after the money disappears. But it does make me wonder how big of a threat could they actually be now without their source of power. But I don't know. That's obviously going to be cleared up. So I don't know how much, if this is the end of White Rose or she'll still be around. That's still a giant question mark. Very curious to see where they go with that, and I want to know what the hell she was talking about when she said that Angela was still alive. And I love how Price even said, "Oh, I almost believed you. I wanted to believe you." It was obvious that he decided not to, and the same with Elliot. But what if she was right? And what if Elliot changes his mind and be like, "Oh my God, I shouldn't have done what I did to White Rose. We are on the same side." What if that happens? I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe it's not going to happen, but I think it would be damn interesting if it did. But, fuck, that was a good episode. All right, so that's all I got to say. I might be forgetting to talk about some things. Maybe I'll talk about it next week or whatever. So, my rating for Conflict out of 10 is a 7. A 7. Of course, it's a fucking 10. This episode is clearly a 10. The best. Yes, this may be. I have to calm down and think about it like months from now before I actually determine it's my favorite episode of the entire show. And of course, there's still 4 episodes left, which could, sway me one way or another. Maybe something better comes out, which, wow, that would be amazing. But goddamn. This episode was good. It's absolutely amazing. Anyway, that is it for my review of Mr. Robot Season 4, Episode 9. I definitely will be back next week to talk about Episode 10. I really hope Mr. Robot, because from, people were like downvoting my videos and whining and playing because I had a lot of complaints about the first half of the season. But this second half, starting with last week's episode, is looking fucking amazing, and I'm going to be nothing but compliments, hopefully, because I'm very confident from here on out it's just going to be a powerhouse of awesome episodes. So, I'm very confident about that. Anyway, that is it for my review of Conflict. Be sure to check out my channel as I continue to cover Mr. Robot. I also do many other shows like Star Trek, The Expanse, and more, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.